Hey everyone, and welcome to This Explainer. I am absolutely thrilled to be your guide today as we step into the role of healthcare compliance educators. Now, if you're tuning in, you'll already know the stakes in healthcare are incredibly high. We aren't just dealing with numbers on a spreadsheet here. We are dealing with real people's lives, highly sensitive data, and, quite frankly, massive amounts of public funds. A single misstep? Well, that can compromise patient trust, trigger crippling fines, or literally even shut a facility down. Doing things right just isn't optional. It is an absolute necessity. So today, we're going to look at the architectural blueprint of a strong ethical organization to prevent those missteps from ever happening in the first place. All right, let's dive right into part 1 of our professional training series, covering the 7 pillars of an effective compliance program and its governance structure. Here is our quick roadmap for today's explainer. We've broken this down into 4 clear modules: foundation of compliance, the 7 core pillars, the governance engine, and finally, a summary and next steps. All right, kicking things off with Module 1, the foundation of compliance. So what exactly do we mean by healthcare compliance at its core? I'll tell you what it's not. It is definitely not just some thick binder sitting on a shelf gathering dust. It's about actively and proactively preventing fraud, waste, and abuse, which you'll often hear called FWA. It's about mitigating operational risks before they snowball into disasters, protecting our vulnerable patients and vital public funds, and above all, fostering an organizational culture of true integrity. The key word to remember here is proactively. Compliance programs exist for proactive prevention and safety, not just handing out reactive punishments when things inevitably go wrong. You know, we really need a complete mindset shift here. Compliance is a legal, business, ethical, and patient care responsibility all rolled into one. It is all of these things at once. It's not just a problem for the legal department to handle behind closed doors. It is a shared cultural responsibility. Whether you're greeting people at the front desk, crunching numbers in the billing department, or providing direct clinical care, this framework protects absolutely everyone, the providers and the patients we serve. Moving right along to Module 2, the 7 core pillars. Think of compliance like a giant architectural blueprint. To hold up the roof, which is our culture of integrity, we rely on 7 distinct structural pillars. Now, these 7 pillars have to work synchronously. If even one of these is weak or missing, the whole organizational structure becomes totally vulnerable to risk. They have to work together to effectively identify and squash compliance risks before they can actually harm the organization. Let's walk through these 7 vital pillars one by one. It all starts with Pillar 1, written policies and procedures. Think of these as your ground rules. They provide clear operational guidelines explaining exactly how work is supposed to be performed compliantly across the whole organization. But once those rules are written, someone has to steer the ship, right? That brings us to Pillar 2, the compliance officer and committee. This is your dedicated leadership team that ensures those rules aren't just theoretical. But leadership isn't enough if the frontline staff doesn't know the rules, hence Pillar 3, training and education. And listen, this isn't just a tedious, one-and-done onboarding requirement. It's ongoing, dynamic education covering things like billing, coding, privacy, and documentation. Okay, so what happens when someone actually spots an issue? That's Pillar 4, open lines of communication. We absolutely have to create safe, accessible, and anonymous channels for everyone to ask questions or report concerns without a second thought. But even with that, we can't just sit around waiting for people to raise their hands, which leads to Pillar 5, monitoring and auditing. This means doing routine reviews of our billing processes and claim quality to catch those sneaky errors early. Now, when errors or intentional violations are found, Pillar 6 kicks in, enforcement and disciplinary standards. These have to be fair, consistent, and decisive standards applied equally to everyone, whether you're a frontline receptionist or a C-suite executive, no exceptions. Finally, Pillar 7 is response and corrective action. This is how we actually implement prompt, root cause resolutions and fix overpayments when issues are confirmed. Together, these 7 steps form a continuous loop of improvement. I really want to pause here for a second because this next point is absolutely vital. Good faith reporting is always safeguarded. You have to be able to speak up without fear. I want to strongly emphasize this safeguard to anyone listening right now. Reporting concerns in good faith is protected, it is highly valued, and it is essential for the health of the organization. Non-retaliation is completely non-negotiable. Psychological safety is literally the bedrock of real compliance. Let's pivot to Module 3, the governance engine. We have our 7 pillars, sure, but what keeps them aligned and actually moving forward? Well, we need a leadership structure. We need an engine. The compliance officer and the compliance committee act as that functional and strategic engine. True compliance requires two kinds of momentum. You need daily operational oversight, and you need high-level cross-departmental collaboration. One sets the strategy, and the other makes sure it happens in real time every single day. Let's contrast their roles real quick to see how this dynamic works. Your compliance officer is your trusted daily resource. They're on the ground, monitoring risks, reviewing audit trends, managing investigations, and connecting those written rules to real-life situations. Crucially, they maintain direct, unobstructed access to senior leadership so nothing gets buried. On the flip side, the Compliance Committee is a cross-functional team, bringing together billing, operations, HR, clinical, IT, legal, and leadership. They zoom out to look at the big picture. They're the ones addressing operational blind spots, evaluating our risk exposure, and making sure audit findings are actually being fixed across the board. And the core philosophy driving this entire engine is so simple. It's not about blame. It's about solutions. Let me say that again. A healthy compliance engine does not exist to point fingers, lay guilt, or trap employees. Its entire focus is on fixing issues early, preventing repeat mistakes, and protecting everyone. Because when an organization's culture embraces solutions over blame, people actually feel safe asking questions and making things better. And that brings us to Module 4, Summary and Next Steps. Let's crystallize the most important takeaways from today. Compliance is truly everyone's responsibility. It's not just a department, it's a daily practice. We must be proactive, not reactive. Culture matters deeply. While policies are the foundation, it's everyday trust, accountability, and the courage to speak up that create real compliance. Remember, this whole system works best when it becomes just a natural part of everyday decision-making, not just some box you check during an annual training module. We've built a fantastic foundation today, but honestly, we are just scratching the surface. Coming up in part 2 of this Explainer series, we're going to take a really deep dive into the mechanics of open communication, detailed disciplinary standards, and exactly how corrective actions are rolled out. You definitely won't want to miss seeing how we put these specific pillars into active practice. Before you go today, I want to leave you with a question. Is your organization's compliance program just a dusty binder on a shelf, or is it a living, breathing part of your daily culture? Thank you so much for your time, your attention, and your commitment to ethical healthcare operations. If you found this structured breakdown valuable and want to keep learning, like, share, subscribe to Decode Healthcare with Harshal. Catch you in the next one.